Good afternoon, and thanks everybody for being here. And as a Catholic, I just want to say we're so blessed to have white smoke this afternoon. So we have a new pope, although we don't know who the pope is yet. So prayers go out to everybody in Rome. I wish we were here under better circumstances. Rye will always be my home, growing up right around the corner, and Playland with its beach and boardwalk is a joy that has provided a lifetime of memories for so many residents and visitors. This is especially true when a child makes the Dragon Coaster height line for the first time to board our iconic coaster. Dinners at the Schulte House were always a little more exciting when treated to some Playland fireworks as we watched in awe from our dining room table. And we didn't even mind the throngs of cars that jammed Playland Parkway all summer long, as we knew this was the price for living near this amazing destination. I issued a statement last week that began with, "Let's be clear. It's time we cut through the muck and get even clearer." Yes, I was part of the Astorino administration, and I'll always be incredibly proud of that. When Rob came to office, this park was derelict, having been run into the ground by a bloated, incompetent, and Democrat administration. It took years of hard work, negotiation, and research, but Rob got it done, culminating in a 2015 unanimous vote, including that of then legislator Ken Jenkins. Yes, Ken Jenkins voted for the Standard Amusement Project. Rob Astorino and his administration did what every executive should do. They left things in better condition than they found them, including Playland. He left this iconic park on a trajectory to celebrate its 100th anniversary and live well into the 21st century. George Latimer simply couldn't have that. He and the Democrats couldn't live with a thriving Playland in his backyard with Rob Astorino to thank for it. So Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins did his boss's bidding to undo the operating agreement with Standard Amusement. In fact, his 2019 failed litigation cost taxpayers close to $10 million in legal fees. After Latimer and Jenkins litigated and renegotiated a perfectly good deal, it lay in ruins just like Playland. So 8 years after the Astorino deal, due to Mr. Jenkins' years of malfeasance, mismanagement, possibly corruption, we actually see history repeating itself. Ken Jenkins' press conference yesterday was yet another debacle with his no announcement, given we have no idea what to expect when Playland opens on Memorial Day weekend. Does free admission mean no rides? What exactly will be opening besides a passive park and a few concessions? Will Kittyland open? Or perhaps Kittyland is all that's going to open? What's clear? It sounds like Ken Jenkins is going to remove the amusement out of this park. Mr. Jenkins is hoping you, the press, won't pay attention to just how expensive his political emergency will further burden Westchester taxpayers. That action triggered a no-bid contract. With my decades of experience, I can tell you a competitive bidding process is needed. And please tell me, how much is this no-bid contract? As Mr. Jenkins yesterday actually refused to answer. Mr. Jenkins has misled Westchester residents and is sticking them with a massive bill. The incompetence and mismanagement has led to failed leadership. And frankly, there's just no better example than the collapse of the Playland operating agreement with Standard Amusement, which has resulted in a whopping $186 million in debt service. This so-called last-minute emergency was a slow-moving freight train that Mr. Jenkins knew about, as Standard Amusement advised they would be pulling out back in November. And what he did was appalling. He buried the skyrocketing costs during the budget season. But this past Monday, he could hide it no longer. The Board of Legislators voted Mr. Jenkins' $36 million Bond Act to deal with the arbitration with Standard Amusement. Folks, we really must restore accountability and transparency to Westchester County government, and I'm running to do just that. And I want to just thank my fellow candidates running on the ticket with me for being here. And I'll take some questions from the media, and I want to thank you guys for being here as well.
Sure. Yeah, I've got a couple, but
Of
my
course.
first one's like there's kind of this subplot involving this fellow Joe Montalto, and his involvement, and he worked with the guy previously on the park, and he ended up getting a ride built or something like that. Does he have anything to do with the problem here? I mean, how does he fit into all of this?
I reference a possible corruption. Frankly, from my perspective, a government emergency is grounds for a no-bid contract, but this was a political emergency. So that's corrupt in and of itself. The fact that it went to Zamperla, and there may be some loose connections with High Mountain, where Mr. Montalto is associated with, I don't know. It's up to the media to do some digging. So I throw the question back to you guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. My other one was just like this idea that one thing that Jenkins keeps doing is basically putting this whole problem is like, oh, this is Astorino's fault, and it's also partially your fault. Now that you're mixed up in it. You kind of addressed that in a way already, but what if you could just
I'll put a finer point on it. I spent 8 years as Rob's chief advisor. I was not part of the negotiating team with Standard Amusement that was led by the deputy county executive. I'm putting Ken in the mix here for having led the 8 years under George, because he was his deputy county executive as a role for the deputy. And he negotiated that deal with Standard Amusement with the legal team. So at the end of the day, I was part of the administration. Obviously, I'm here defending the administration because Rob left Playland in very good hands with that deal. The problem is that they needed to perform with the infrastructure. You can't layer new construction, rides, etc., on top of old infrastructure. So when they faltered and failed to do that, and from day one fought the agreement for the reasons I stated, this is the mess we have. It's complete mismanagement. I mean, I used to oversee capital projects. I built out an IT system that tracked capital projects because I didn't like hearing we didn't know what was going on with them. Maybe they mothballed that. I don't know. But something terribly wrong is going on over there. Thank you.
When they redid the contract, have you analyzed what was different about the new contract from the old contract? Were there any changes that they made to it that you believe made it worse?
As infrastructure ages, so I would only have to imagine that when they renegotiated that contract, that some of the terms might, have changed, or the projects on both sides, because as I'm speaking, that the county has to do infrastructure, probably in advance of the Standard Amusement going in with their improvements, right? Like switch gears and things like that. So, but David, I haven't analyzed it to say, enumerate. We can get back to you on that. Okay?
Yeah,
I would happily do that.
Yeah, and because they're just trying to say, well, we were stuck with Astorino's contract. There wasn't that much we could do, but they did come up with something new.
That's untrue. Ken was part of the unanimous vote back in 2015. And that's the history, and it took a lot of work to get a unanimous vote out of a Democrat administration when you're a Republican, and we were happy to do the work. I mean, we wanted to get a deal that made sense across the board, and with Rob's endeavoring, all the research, like I said, the hard work, the negotiations, it's hard to get everybody on the same page, and he did that. And I'm sorry, Mr. Latimer just didn't want Rob's legacy to go forward, Playland, when he lives right around the corner. I mean, I'm on one side of the parkway, he's on the other.
Yeah. What is your vision for Playland going forward if you were to be elected as county executive?
That's a good question. Starting in 2026, if I'm blessed to be elected, it will be my priority to preserve this iconic park for future generations while protecting the taxpayers. $36 million to not open Playland is unacceptable. So it's a balancing act. We are going to preserve it. It is a treasure. It's people and families and jobs and young people that rely on this park, the local economy. So that's going to be my endeavor, to immediately meet with, Commissioner O'Connor, who I know very well. I worked with her, Rob appointed her. And I know these players. I've worked with most of the commissioners. So, and they know how I am very straightforward, and I ask the right questions, and I get the right people in the room, and you make decisions that are right for the taxpayers and the people of this county. Any other questions?
Do you feel prioritization of the park was good, and is it still needed?
Prioritization of the park was the right call from County Executive Astorino. You have to understand it was costing the taxpayers a $4 million annual subsidy. Now that might not sound like a lot, but over the course of a 4-year term, that's $32 million, and over the course of 2 terms, that's $64 million. That is a monkey on the back of taxpayers, and it had to stop. And the best solution was a public-private partnership. I've worked on public-private partnerships. I worked on the SFC project in Yonkers for Mayor Riccone, $1.5 billion, same thing, bigger numbers, but same thing. We have to come in with public money and then put the private investment on top of that. That's a public-private partnership that would have preserved Playland, and they pretty much, from day one, started to undo the deal at a huge cost to the taxpayer. Totally wrong-headed. And, shame on Ken Jenkins for taking us on a ride, but I will fix Playland and I will protect taxpayers. Thank you for your question.
One more question for you.
Of course.
The county executive blamed the Astorino administration for what you had to deal with. How do you feel about this?
Well, he's just wrong. Like I said, we spent years negotiating with the board that culminated in 2015, because we took office in 2010, and we got a unanimous vote out of a majority Democrat legislature. You're always going to have to do work. Even if it was a majority Republican legislature, you're going to always have to do work. And we have no problem rolling up our sleeves and doing the diligence, working with stakeholders, many of right here in Rye, which you'd have to do. Everybody was engaged. So there was no way to really push back on the deal because you had so many stakeholders at the table, and the legislators all unanimously voted for it, including Mr. Jenkins. I know he's trying to run from it, but he can't run from history. You guys in the media should take a screenshot of that vote. What happened, a year later when he said he didn't vote for it? You're always going to go through amendments. That was a restatement and amendment, but it was minor stuff. And you look at Ken. He voted that same meeting against many infrastructure projects that needed to be approved at Playland. He voted against them. I want to say there's 7 or 8 of them.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Have a beautiful day.
You too.